Hello friends, neighbors. John, your Whisky neighbor here. Welcome down to the Nook. It is Sunday, usually shoot samples, but we're on the tail end of Canadian Whiskey Week, and sometimes I open bottles with you. So if you watch the short, I just cracked open this single grain oats from Gretzky Estates. Part of their Craftsmanship series, same series that this rye that I've already talked to you about is in. 6.5 years, only oats. This year, 2025, it won the best Canadian alternative grain. How many there are in that category, I'm not even really clear, but we have a few. I've got 4 of them up here beside this one that are definitely not, corn, barley, wheat, typical whiskey grains. So if you want to know what an oat whiskey tastes like, 100% oats. I know I do. I haven't had it yet. Why don't you pour something a little bit different, and come on back and we'll get into this cask strength oat whiskey. 3, 4. Thanks for staying with me. As I said, I hope you poured something unique. This is, it's from Gretzky Estates, but I want to highlight, this Craftsmanship series really tells us that distilling hobbit Tim Wilson is the person behind crafting these, and I love that little bit of extra information. Now there's someone I can follow, someone I can watch, look at their career, see what they're putting together. I don't really know the inspiration. I'd love, Tim, for you to get on this channel and let's chat through both of these and talk to me about what you're thinking here, because this is a 6.5 year only oats whiskey and released at, must be the actual cask strength, because 63.24% is really specific. It's usually someone trying to say something with the numbers. I don't know, but that's a lot of proof. It's a lot of percent, and 6.5 years in new oak makes me think, you didn't mention it on here. Please do next time. But it could be natural color. It's very, very dark, but new charred oak, 6.5 years, you can actually get quite a bit of color. I know we often, of course, we get color from sherry and wine and those kinds of things, but 6.5 years in new oak can give this kind of color. I don't know if it's chill filtered. Sure wouldn't need to be at that kind of proof. This is certainly going to be a wake up for my palate when we get to it. It doesn't seem to cling lots to the glass, which I thought was kind of interesting. I'm bumping things around when I'm trying to set up the film for you, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. And I'd like to know, Tim, what was the inspiration to go with oats? I've seen oats. I've had oats in whiskey. Probably the most famous is Kilbegan's pot still. I think they put 5 or 10. Now I can't remember, but they put a small percentage of oats, and apparently that's fairly traditional for Irish whiskey. That used to be pretty common to put a bit of oats in there. And so I know I've had oats in something else and now it's just poof out of my head, but it's not common, and I certainly have never ever had 100% oat whiskey. Just not that common, right? Barley, of course, we've got the single malts. The barley, Scotland's most famous for that. We have lots of Canadian single malts too. And then rye, Canada's known for lots of rye, good rye grain. Great rye coming out of America too, so that kind of grassy is there. But oats, just not on the top of my list in terms of wheats. We've had wheaters. Usually it's a secondary grain in bourbons out of the States, but we have several 100% wheat whiskeys here in Canada. Anyways, I'm rambling a little bit to try to say, I'd love to know the inspiration. Was it just, I want to know, I'm going to try this? Or you try to run and just even that new make, you thought, there's some quality going on here? I don't know. What I should have had this morning? I should have had some oats so my palate knows just what oatmeal tastes like. But I didn't. I admit it was a pancake kind of morning. There we go. Now we've got a little more adhesion to the glass. I just expected it to be a little more oily, and there's some of that going on. Interesting. So I don't know enough. Distilling Hobbit Online, so much fun to follow you. I don't know enough about the inspiration. But I'm very curious, and this did win 2025 Whiskey of the Year, and I also heard about it on Whiskey Cast, tried it back in October, really high rating from that fine fellow from Mark, so let's see what it's like on the nose. It's interesting, it's a little sharp, It's kind of, there's some sweetness that comes up pretty quick. Quite a bit of alcohol. I got water and a little teaspoon. I'm probably gonna have to tamp it down. Oh, there's a nice little more grain sweetness kind of coming up. It took a second at first. It was just kind of sugared and a little bit sharp for my nose. Like it's a not roasted grain, but a grain note. A nice sweeter cooked note. I'm trying to think of a type of sugar. Maybe just brown sugar? Yeah, maybe like a molasses brown sugar. I could go with that. I could go with some grain husk and some molasses sugar and not a lot of fruit. Not a lot of spice either. Maybe a little bit of cinnamon. Oh, there it is again. A very unique grain note. I mean, obviously an oat note. This maybe will stay on the shelf as a reference for when I do get a whiskey that has a little bit of oats. I'll have to take a sip, nose this, and say, okay, that's what I'm getting. It's oats. Nose didn't yield that much for me. Maybe my palate needs to have a little splash of this. I'll try to take a small sip because that's a pretty monster percent. Cheers. Hope you have something fun in your glass. That's really quite tasty. It is pretty dry, a fair amount of oak. And then I'm gonna stay with some of those same sweetnesses, just a light caramel, cooked brown sugar, grain, husk, dry. Not a lot more in the tasting notes. Maybe a second little sip. But when I say tasty, it goes across the palate. Sure, it is very hot, but it's the kind of thing that you keep in your mouth. When it's sweet and it feels good to have. Like that's what I mean when I say, it's tasty, because the palate says, oh, the flavors that are here, even if I'm having a tough time describing them, are enjoyable. Let me try another sip. Cheers. A little bit of vanilla sweetness, lots of cooked molasses, dry oats. I'm gonna have to say it. I keep saying grain, but nice dried oats. It's interesting because I tend to, in my oatmeal, put a little brown sugar, put a little cream or milk or something on there, and that's just my favorite way to have it. And this has a lot of echoes of that. It has that sweetness, but it's like I'm eating it with one of those wooden spoons we have now instead of plastic. Like this is that popsicle stick drying oak mixed in with eating a bowl of oatmeal with brown sugar. So I'm not getting a lot of fruits. I got almost. Okay, I'm gonna go somewhere that I haven't even hinted at. But I almost got a little bit of citrus, like a little bit of vanilla, not vanilla, lemon. Like just out of nowhere on the long finish, I got a little bit of sourness, but not a terrible sourness, but a sourness that made my mind immediately think of lemon, which until that moment, was not part of the experience. I'm gonna have another quick sip. And now I'm getting that again. Drying, oats, brown sugars, a little bit of lemon. Interesting. I'm gonna put a bit of water on it because of course it can take it to see what secondary flavors might come up. I'll put some water on there and then let it rest, clear the palate, and come back. Okay, I do want to talk to you about an alternative grain. And I've got triticale or triticale, I've got lentil, I've got quinoa, I've definitely got some alternative grains, but I really want to talk to you about this rice whiskey from Last Straw. I've mentioned it recently. I believe it won last year's 2024 Alternative Grain Whiskey of the Year, and it remains a very distinct and unique whiskey. It's 100% brown rice, clearly says non-chill filtered natural color. Thank you for saying that. That's the way we want an integrity release out there so that we know it. It's got to be on the label, you guys. And then it's put in a Recharred X wine barrel, natural, and it's, like I said, it's that brown rice. I'm gonna go in, try to be a little quicker with you guys. Oh, I like this one. And I like this one after I've had a whiskey or two, and suddenly, like, I'm bored. I can't explain it. It's like I'm not bored. I have amazing and wonderful whiskey, but I'm like, I need a shift. I need a change. And this is so different. Like even this oat actually still is a whiskey. This is still a whiskey too, but it is so different. It is roasted brown rice and higher sweetness. There's a bit of fruit in here, a little bit of red fruits. And honestly, like, when you have to, like, maybe you've refried rice and you're scraping that, that Maillard reaction kind of stuff, totally even on the nose. Cheers. It's not creamy enough to be rice pudding, but we're getting there, right? And even like, and it doesn't have the texture of raisins, but I'm getting a little bit of that raisin almost. That's got to be the charred wine. So I've got char, I've got that leathered raisiny fruit going on. I've got that brown, like, fried rice kind of reaction on there. This is one of the tastiest but wildly different whiskeys I have ever had. Like, if it's still on the shelf and you're looking for different, please don't pick this up if all you drink are single malts and you think, oh, it'll be good like my single malt. It'll be so different you might hate it. But it is so flavorful. It's an absolute favorite of mine. Coming back to the main star here, I have proofed it down. I didn't measure it, so I don't know how much. It's more approachable. Nice. And now that integrated of cooked sugars now. I'm burning the brown sugar down on the palate. Boy, it's still oaky. It's not over oaked, but it is right on that edge. If you struggle with that bracing of oak, if you don't drink a lot of bourbons, the new oak here is going to say hello very powerfully. Really nice though, nice and dry and oaked, and then a sweetness of some brown sugar in with your oatmeal. It does have that grain. I enjoy it. I'm glad I got it. Paid a little more than I wanted for it. Their rye sitting on the shelf at 50% for $50 Canadian. At 49 is just right. $100. Cask strength. It's hard not to push it out at that, but it's a little much for what I would want to pay. Do I enjoy it? I do, and I'll keep it as a reference. I'll share it with anybody around who wants to say, hey, what does an oat whiskey taste like? Now I got something on the shelf to pour in with my unique grain collection. Thanks for joining me here. It's just a first taste. You can see I've just got into it. Not really a critical, certainly can't rate it. But it was fun to share and fun to compare it to last year's winner. Couldn't be more different. This is actually closer to a whiskey. You would know this as a whiskey. This is just fun. Thanks for joining me. Have a great week.